And following renewed attacks in communities across 3 local government areas of Plateau State, the Nigerian Bar Association is calling for the establishment of state police. Well, the NBA, the umbrella body for lawyers, is asking President Bola Tinubu and the National Assembly to approve community policing as measures geared towards protecting the people at the grassroots.
The 4 branches of the NBA commend the actions taken so far by the state government and further call on the state government and the federal government to take comprehensive and proactive steps to forestall future occurrence of these genocidal attacks on the people of Plateau. On this note, make the following demand: that the states should be allowed to establish state police who will be armed with weapons to defend our communities. Engagement of security breach, early warning mechanism through collaboration with community leaders, civil society, and security stakeholders. The communities be allowed to defend themselves. We therefore demand that the federal government empower vulnerable communities with self-defense mechanism and equipment, since the security personnel we have are not enough to secure our lives.
Self-defense, it is not regarded as a crime. However, the issue of self-defense has to do with someone coming to attack you and you defending yourself. In simple terms, that is what it means. So the only snag is that you do not have to use force that is not commensurate. The force you are using to defend yourself must be commensurate to the attack.
Well, let's bring in Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is the CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight.
My pleasure.
Well, a lot of security matters arising at this time, but let's begin with the north central of Nigeria. We've heard from the governors and political leaders. Governor of Benue State says it's land grabbing what's happening in the state. The governor of Plateau says his state is under siege. The National Security Advisor, who took the president's message to Benue today, says evil has visited Benue State. But what exactly is going on in north central Nigeria? Is this a new dynamic or a continuation of old conflicts?
It is a continuation of old conflict. I haven't seen anything new that has not been in existence over the past few years. And I urge all the personalities that you've mentioned to act. This is not the time to be political and make statements. People are dying, and each of them has a responsibility on his shoulder, given to him either at the federal level or at the state level. That responsibility is clearly stated in Section 14 of Section 2 of our Constitution. So I urge them to act. Essentially, what we have in the North Central is an identity-based conflict. There are different groups who are projecting their interest, and unfortunately, sometimes through criminal means. And it is the responsibility of the state to identify that criminality and to deal with it. The peculiarities of some of the states in the North Central, especially where there is a border line between, let's say, the state and another country in the world, demands that the federal government should take action to ensure that that border is adequately protected and that there are no persons coming in from across the border to come and perpetrate. Once we resolve that and we're able to isolate the criminals that are inside Nigeria, we should be able to deal with them as a state. So it's clearly the responsibility of the state to go after these criminals and deal with them.
I'm sorry, but I do sense some sort of disappointment in your tone when you say this is nothing new and we should be able to deal with it. So the question is, why are we not able to deal with it? How much of accountability and justice is playing out here? Because some will say impunity drives the cycle of violence. Are we able to bring perpetrators to book so far, in your own opinion? And how much of a factor is that?
In my honest opinion, no. And you are a journalist. This current cycle has been going on for a couple of weeks now.
Yes.
I watch your station almost religiously. I haven't seen in one instance where anyone has been held to account, from the side of the demand side to the supply side. Both the bad guys, even, in the case of Jos, we had a couple of 3-4 persons were arrested, but I haven't heard that they've been charged to court. They're yet to be prosecuted. And on the side of those who have responsibility to prevent the attack, I haven't had one of them being held to account. So clearly, that's the case we are. Now, when we look at the drivers of the conflict, one of the drivers is our failed justice system, as it were. That justice system that fails to arrest offenders, that fails to prosecute offenders, now lead most communities to seek weapons in order to extract their. So it's clearly a case of the failure of the justice system and a failure of accountability.
Let's talk about the response in terms of military might and, you know, security architecture, intelligence, and all of that. How would you say we are faring in that stead? I mean, not to preempt your answer, obviously poorly. I mean, if this is recurring from time immemorial, but how would you, what seems to be the problem when it comes to our security operatives responding? Is the Nigerian military able to do this? Are they overstretched? Are they overwhelmed? What exactly is it?
So clearly, the Nigerian military is deployed in multiple theaters of conflict, and that's not good for any, no matter how good that military is. The moment it has different theaters of conflict, an issue of equipment deficit, sometimes issue of capacity, funding in these difficult economic circumstances. So many challenges would arise. And then in this circumstance, like I said, and I am not shying from repeating the fact that this is an identity-based conflict. The approach should not be kinetic. The approach requires peace-building measures that would allow communities to understand why, what is it they are fighting about. If the governor of Benue State, it's about land grabbing, then what land governance policy does the state have that would promote inclusivity, that will promote equity, and that will promote justice? Perhaps that's one of the solutions. And then if that's not the case, I don't want to sound as if I do not recognize there are criminals. There are criminals. But before we deal with those criminals, we have to heal our communities to be able to work together. Perhaps we'll go to discuss Kwara State.
Yes, we shall.
The person that was killed in Kwara is from a harder community, and it's most likely he was targeted because he was supporting security forces. So what kind of protection are we giving individuals like that? Now, the myriad of problems that have led us to where we are cannot be dealt with just one solution. Those myriad of challenges require a strategy that is based on peace building, that is based on security, and at the end of the day, that is based on addressing this social cohesion challenge that we have in the country at the moment.
In the social cohesion, because when you talk about community-led justice and reconciliation, but people will say, if we are reducing over thousands of lives killed in less than 2 weeks to farmer header crisis, identity crisis, it's mind-boggling to think that, you know, you would kill someone over land or grazing or cattle. It makes no sense, really.
But unfortunately, that's what's happening. It's been allowed to sustain for so long that criminality has now become institutionalized. One of my greatest shock today is hearing from the member of a community, of course it was on social media, advocating for, this is something that we've recorded over time. We did an investigation, and we found out that communities in Nigeria collect levies from residents and use those levies to buy weaponry and to buy influence over time. Now, because of that, this issue has become so institutionalized that people are using guns, of course purchasing it through monies that they've been able to collect, and from that, that's why we're seeing what we're doing. If we had addressed it at the beginning, perhaps we would not be where we are. But it's so institutionalized that people, in fact, when people talk about it, you think it's a declaration of war, actually.
Let's move away from the North Central. We've seen insecurity in other regions as well. There's a mind-troubling story as well in Zamfara, a shocking case where we have bandits imposing 60 million naira levy on 12 communities. And this is because they said they are being punished for giving information to the Nigerian military. So how do we, you know, juxtapose solving this problem, gathering information from the community, and then having reprisals such as this? Then there's also the ISWAP story. I mean, for ISWAP to boldly say, we're taking responsibility for attacking the Nigerian army and police formation and militias you know, that work with the Nigerian army.
Yeah, so starting from Zamfara, it's nothing new. This has been going on for a while now, where I prefer to just call them non-state armed groups. It's a combination of terrorists, a combination of bandits, and whatever. They've been collecting levies from communities for quite some time. And the principal reason for that is the thin deployment of security personnel within those communities. In most of those communities, you probably have sometimes just the state level security structure. Then you may have a deployment of police a couple of kilometers away that would just come when they are called. So these guys are able to operate with a freedom that allows them to do this thing. And then added to that is the shadow economy that still exists in Nigeria. And I must commend the Bola Tinubu administration for the recent attempt to rebase the economy, and in doing that, make sure that the shadow economy is sort of covered within our the formal economy. So that's a good progress. But the security organizations, they don't seem to realize that if we don't have eye on that shadow economy, because think about it, where would that 60 million come from? Today, as an individual, if you go to the bank to withdraw cash, you will be unable to. But then somehow 60 million will be generated and given to criminals. So that shadow economy, we need to find a way to have eyes and monitor the movement of money. So that's the challenge partly in Zamfara state. The counter-terrorism measures, we don't even have an anti-banditry strategy. But the point I was trying to make is we need to ensure that movement of cash, it's also part of our security strategy, so that we know what goes where and we're able to trace it, and where we need to, we take action on that.
And the ISWAP claiming responsibility, I mean, is that credible? That ISWAP is able to carry out all these multiple attacks on the Nigerian army?
It's been going on. For most of the incidents that ISWAP claims in its releases, most of them would have occurred. I mean, there's a lot of propaganda, which is usually the case. They will add probably the number of security personnel they've killed, the number of equipment they've been able to acquire. But in terms of the incident itself, it's confirmed that those incidents did happen. But I must say that this is not new. The propaganda machinery of ISWAP has been there for a very long time, and most times they use the cyberspace to release this. It's a publication that they do on a weekly basis, and sometimes they just release it on different, sometimes even within the dark web that finds it safe within the web you and I use. But it's nothing new. It's something that has been going on for a while. Interesting.
Very quickly, in 20 seconds, if you can, and forgive me for that. You had mentioned earlier that these political figures need to work and they need to stop talking. We had a high-profile visit such as the NSA. And I'm not sure you think that makes a lot of impact, but there are those who say President Bola Tinubu needs to put his foot on the ground, practically go to these troubled regions. Do you think he should go, and what impact would that have?
I don't kid myself about the reality of where we are. So how many states can he go to? Just this,
for instance, Benue, Borno,
no, it will be counterproductive if he does that, because he hasn't been to Zamfara, he hasn't been to Niger, he hasn't been to Katsina, where more people have been killed than Benue and Plateau. So from a political point of view, except if it's to meet this binary, I would say, love that the media has for Benue and Plateau, maybe it's fine. But from a political point of view, if it doesn't go to all of the states, then it will be counterproductive.
All right, thank you so much. Dr. Kabir Adamu is the CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. Thank you for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Stories.